Alright, so how we...
You start. This is a My Little Pony the movie review. This is a goddamn review of a goddamn tie-in movie. Now start the goddamn review, goddammit.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is the one and only Inshoma, and welcome to a special podcast for, of all things, My Little Pony the movie. The second one, not the first one done in the 80s. And I can't believe we're doing this. Originally, I tried to entice my friend Kaiju Noir to do this as a first impressions on his channel, but after having a rather Emily Blunt discussion on the matter, I decided to respect his wishes, and instead we're doing this as a podcast review on my extremely obscure Sargasso Sea style channel.
That way nobody can ever see this. Hopefully. Although I'm sure a handful of hardcore fans will still watch this.
The funny thing I noticed, and I know we're probably going to get into this in a little bit, we just finished watching it. Almost nobody's talking about this movie online. And it's weird, too, because there are so many MLP commentators that I honestly thought there'd be like a bunch of early videos as soon as the movie premiered on midnight showings.
Didn't Andre from Black Nerd Comedy made a review?
Yeah, but he was very unenthusiastic about it, and of course he's not an MLP fan, and I'll explain our status in that regard pretty soon. But Brad Jones did a review, but only as a follow-up because he reviewed the 1980s movie.
Oh, okay.
Which was a pretty funny episode, the poor bastard.
So pretty much everyone is doing this ironically, even me.
Well, here's the thing. I wanted to take a look at this movie for two reasons.
You're a sick bastard.
One, I am actually a fan of the show, but I'm more of not exactly a full-blown brony, I guess, because I do watch the show, I do catch it when it's on.
You're bro-curious.
But I'm not as obsessed with it as most other fans of this series is. You could say, for one thing, I will admit right off the bat, the television show itself is not bad. It's actually pretty good, but it's also a bit overrated. And it's not as horrible, or not overrated in the same sense that its detractors accuse it of being, flippantly or seriously. But it's not the end-of-the-world perfection that the diehard bronies make it out to be, as well as Pegasisters, or whatever fans of this show say it to be. So I kind of wanted to review this movie with kind of an even-headed mentality. But I didn't want to do it alone, nor did I want to do it with a fellow fan. I kind of wanted to get an unbiased newbie, or should I say, newcomer. Yes, newcomer is the much more pleasant terminology. Newbie is a backhanded compliment, or insult, I should say. Sorry about that, Andres. Kaiju Noir, whatever your name is.
I honestly don't care.
And, so I decided to bring Kaiju Noir on the chat, and...
I hate you so much right now. How about a brief plot synopsis?
How about we let you do the plot synopsis, because I'll be too accurate, and you will be too comical, so let's have some laughs with this one.
Okay, we get introduced to a bunch of these characters, and learn all about their one-dimensional traits, at which point, bad guy who we never seen in the series pop up, and fucks shit up, at which point the characters are like, oh no, what are we gonna do? Oh wait, there's a MacGuffin! We have to travel to find the MacGuffin! Road trip! Then they go to find the MacGuffin. They meet characters along the way who join them on their quest. They find out the real MacGuffin was inside them all along. And with the power of friendship, they defeat the bad guy at the end. And the villainess who was working for the bad guy turned out to have a tragic backstory. So she joins them, and they all lived happily ever after.
Or do they? Bum bum bum.
They did, but not me.
Yeah, that's pretty much the plot there. Just a re-synopsis, basically a new villain named the Storm King, some sort of satyr, goat man or something.
I thought he was a monkey.
His number one henchwoman, Tempest Storm? What was her name?
Tempest.
Yeah, Tempest, to basically kidnap the 4 princesses of Equestria. Twilight Sparkle and her friends, however, escape in the nick of time, and as you say, they go on a road trip to chase a MacGuffin up to meet up with the hippogriffs, who we later discover have transformed themselves into seahorses to avoid the Storm King's wrath, or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, yeah, it's one of those movies where the status quo is destroyed in the regular setting, and it forces our heroes to go on a journey, which results in a bunch of new characters we'll probably never, ever, ever, ever meet again in the television show proper. So,
But don't forget the sad moment that happens in every single kid's movie, where everyone is sad and they don't know what's gonna happen because they're sad. And then they realize that there's still hope. It's to be honest, like, all kidding aside, it's one of those cliches in children's stories that I fucking hate, because it's really predictable. Oh no, they're friends, but now they're not friends. What's gonna happen next? Surely they're not gonna be friends again by the climax. And then guess what? It happens. It's a very predictable story beat.
As the liar reveal.
Oh yeah, that's definitely the same as the liar reveal, which they also did here, but thank God it was early on in the movie.
Yeah, no, just before the third act or during the third act, our heroes finally meet up with the hippogriffs, or the seahorses, and they try to convince the seahorses to help them battle the Storm King. Or at least let them use the magical MacGuffin, a sort of pearl that can transform creatures into other species. Of course, as you noted, this seems like an excuse for Hasbro to sell more toys.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out, in a somewhat out of character move, Twilight Sparkle sends her friends to distract the seahorses to do the usual song and pony show musical number that gets them as friends, but Twilight foolishly decides to try to steal the pearl, and then of course our heroes basically part their ways briefly. She gets captured by the lead villains, one of those deals, and it eventually leads to all the characters they meet join forces with Twilight's friends, and in a surprisingly violent climax where they just basically storm the castle and set people on fire, which is not what I would expect from True, there's been battles and violence in My Little Ponies before, even some Dragon Ball Z style fights, but yeah, I was not expecting to see, like, henchmen be engulfed in little baby dragon flamethrowers.
Mm-hmm.
Does that kind of perfectly capsulize this movie?
I guess. Maybe.
So,
I'm not sure.
It's funny. I tried watching this movie by myself beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
I only got through, like, the first 15 minutes, but it's funny. I think you hit it on the nail perfectly by comparing this to, like, an anime television series that gets its own spin-off movie, like, one of the movies from Bleach or Inuyasha,
Naruto,
or one of the
Dragon Ball, yeah.
Where
a new villain shows up, it's a challenge, so then they learn to beat the villain, and nothing that occurs here will affect them in the series.
Regardless,
the only time a tie-in movie ever does anything is when it's meant to serve as a series finale.
Yeah, and that's fairly rare. And you're right. Even when these movies are a part of the main continuity, nothing's ever gained or affected, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I really don't have much to say about this film.
Right. Because there's
yeah,
nothing to talk about other than how were your precious ponies portrayed? How well were these precious ponies portrayed in Shoma?
Well, first off, I'm not that diehard of a fan. They're more or less the same characters from the TV show, but they seem a lot less proactive than they are in the television show. It's amazing how easily they get defeated. In the television show, there's at least Pegasus or Unicorn guards that, defend the princesses, and even the town folks have been known to kick butt. As I mentioned, there's certain TV episodes that are more cinematic in scope than this movie is. One in particular was where the Moon Princess, whose name escapes me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Princess Luna. She's kind of dealing with some sort of nightmare monster, and in order to defeat them, Twilight Sparkle and the other girls, they actually go into the dream dimension and to fight this monster, but they end up actually recruiting all the townsfolks, all the other background ponies, and we get a rather, believe it or not, epic battle against this nightmare creature. And it's actually a pretty good episode. In fact, if you want an example of one of the more action-oriented episodes of My Little Pony Friendship and Magic, that's the way to go. I was kind of hoping something similar for the movie, except, taken up a notch, but what we ended up getting was like somewhere between a above average, not so bad direct to DVD Disney sequel,
mm-hmm.
and your typical children's film spin-off from a television series, you know. Although thankfully this didn't end up being Turbo, a Power Rangers movie. Or did it?
I would say, well, they did lose a lot of their power, and they had to go find a MacGuffin.
Yeah, and similar to...
And meet characters along the way.
Yeah.
Only to find out the power Rangers, was in them the whole time, and then they fought the bad guy, who never appears in the show, except as a reused costume in Power Rangers in space.
Now, it really isn't a bad film.
Yes,
it's a lot better than I expected. It's well done, but at the same time, it doesn't really exactly reach the heights that makes it worthy of being a theatrical release. Especially now that we're like in the 6th, 7th season of this show. I don't know. It's like it's hard to do a good movie that's spun off from a TV show. Even the Simpsons movie did not exactly deliver in the end.
Although it was funny that the first episode, right after the movie, you still see Springfield recovering from the events of the movie.
Oh, that is a good point.
Although Lisa's new boyfriend in that movie was never seen again.
Well, okay, so that's my take on the movie, since I actually am familiar with the TV show. Like the only out-of-character moments seem to be with Twilight Sparkle being a little more not as intelligent as usual and taking some desperate and foolish steps to save the day, you know. But then again, that did feel like very forced drama. And would you agree in that regard?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
It's like it's all about the power of friendship, and you need to trust your friends, and blah yada yada yada. It's a very generic story, and I figured that shouldn't this be a lesson that was learned in like season 1 or 2? This feels like for a show that's been around this long, you'd think that would have been one of the first lessons that the characters should have learned within the show itself, instead of relearning it in a movie.
The sad thing about the TV show, I have to admit, is even though there's plenty of good episodes and very likable characters, they do kind of repeat the same lessons and plot lines over and over again. They change them just enough that you don't notice at first, but it's like I was telling you, there was one episode recently that was kind of poking fun at the fans themselves, where one of the complaints they brought up is a complaint that a lot of the show watchers do bring up, that Fluttershy, the very shy yellow Pegasus, her stories are almost exactly the same, and she learns the same damn lesson every time. And you're right, I think Twilight Sparkle has had these lessons before in the TV show itself. It just, I think forced drama is probably the best way to describe this,
because there's
third act of this movie.
Because there's nothing really going on with any of these characters outside of their, like I said, outside of their one-note character traits. In fact, even though the cowboy one, she didn't really do anything. The shy pony didn't do anything. The pink one, she gets to be her hyper annoying self. The vanity Smurf pony thing, she was always concerned about her looks and fashion and all that junk. The blue Pegasus, she was like, I guess, the tough one, like the more like headstrong one. And then we had Twilight Sparkle, the purple one, who has to learn about friendship and to trust her friends more. And there's Spike, who's kind of a bit of a comic relief, and I guess points out the obvious. Those are basically our characters, and they, as my first true introduction to these characters, they did not interest me in the slightest.
Getting to Spike, the sad thing about Spike is he's always been kind of a
background character,
low man on the totem pole, and the
ornament.
Comic relief character.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is, in the last 2 seasons, he's been getting a lot of really good character development. He's been very proactive and intelligent. You know, even though he lacks the magical powers of his pseudo big sister Twilight Sparkle, you know, he's actually proven himself to be quite a handy, capable character. Damn it, that came out weird. A very capable character. Here, though, it really does feel like they kind of rewind all the character development back to season 1, the earlier episodes. Again, it's not a bad movie, but it's, you know, I think generic is probably the best way to put it. We've seen this happen before. I didn't regret watching it, but at the same time, it's like again, there's better episodes of the series, and the characters have been far more proactive, a lot more developed in the TV show itself. And here they're not only kind of, their personalities are kind of one-dimensionalized, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. And also, they took a back seat to everything else that was going around them in this movie. Because
I'm assuming that all of these new locations and characters have never been seen in the show, nor will they ever be seen.
I don't know about the latter, but you are definitely right about the former. Everything here is brand new. Believe it or not, we've outside possibly minotaurs. Mm-hmm. We've never had full-blown anthropomorphic animal characters. Mm-hmm. Like the cat Capper and the Zoe Saldana parrot pirate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't even know their names. No, the big problem was that our lead heroes took a back seat to all the new developments that were occurring around them. And it really felt like they were more the guest stars in the movie than the actual guest stars. Mm-hmm. Like, it's almost like you can almost call this movie the Tempest film. I have to admit, this is not the best way to introduce somebody to My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. And I wouldn't, not in the sense that I'm trying to get you into the franchise, not at all. Yeah. Like, I am tempted to show you a couple better episodes of the TV show itself, especially the giant monster-related ones.
But here's the thing. There's nothing that will ever get me interested in My Little Pony simply because ponies are not interesting to me.
Right. But no,
much like how some people don't enjoy giant monsters, flat out do not enjoy anything of that nature. I do not enjoy anything of that nature. I do not enjoy the songs. I do not enjoy fucking Pinkie Pie. I do not enjoy the color palette of this show. I don't even like the animation of this show. Nothing about this show appeals to me in any way. And this movie confirms that I will never be a My Little Pony fan.
And that's more than okay. But the point I'm trying to get to is this is not a good gateway into it if you are trying to introduce somebody to the show. Right. Not to get them into the franchise, but to just show them why it became popular in the first place.
Right. However, I will say that I can easily see little girls really enjoying this movie. Much like how I enjoyed the Pokemon movie, the Digimon movie, the Dragon Ball movies, where you see characters you're already familiar with in a brand new situation, or even a familiar situation, but with higher animation budgets, and you get to see cameos of your favorite characters from the show throughout the film. So I can definitely see the appeal with young kids who do not give a single shit about the quality of the story. And you know what? Good on them.
And with that completely said, the Digimon movie and the Pokemon movies in retrospect have not held up, especially the former.
No, but as children, I certainly did enjoy those movies because I just enjoyed the novelty of seeing my favorite TV characters on the big screen with better animation in a larger, more, how would I say, stakes raised type of situation.
Yeah, but again, going back to the comparison to like an anime spin-off movie, like I really do like The World's Strongest, that one Dragon Ball Z movie, where our heroes are fighting against a mad scientist and his various creations, and that's been done in the TV series before, but because it's a singular movie, we're not like watching 50 episodes worth of the same story stretched out horrifically. But at the same time, it's like, as fun as that movie is, and even knowing it's like the movie itself is a good introduction to Dragon Ball, if you don't want to show somebody an entire story arc, it really has no consequences or bearing on the main story itself. And even knowing this film didn't do it as badly, I'm also reminded of the Inuyasha movies where some dramatic stuff happens within the story itself, but everything's returned to the status quo, and annoyingly so by the end. Again, is this movie really as bad as that, or you think it kind of I do agree it works as just something for the kids, and it's not. There's a lot worse movies that little girls and boys can be watching over this.
Yeah, I definitely think there's much worse for children to watch. I think some of those other movies we have mentioned from those other franchises we have mentioned may have actually be better in quality because this is something I mentioned in my Kamen Rider #1 movie, Kamen Rider 1 movie, 2016 movie review, where I mentioned that in many of these anime films, the main characters never change, but they would usually meet a secondary character who plays a very important part of this plot, and it's usually that main character who goes through a story arc of sorts. And so, let's see, off the top of my head, we had, like I said, the Kamen Rider #1 movie. Kamen Rider Ghost and his cast of characters never changed, but the movie focused, the plots focused mostly all around Takeshi Hongo. Let's see, in I think it was the first Naruto movie, Ninja Clash in the Land of Snow, I believe they met one particular character, and Naruto, as usual, becomes friends with said character, and usually he plays the key to saving the day. Or maybe I'm thinking about the third Naruto movie, possibly. Anyways, where Sakura, and Rock Lee look after this annoying spoiled brat who learns to appreciate the finer things in life. So with this movie, we have Tempest being the character who plays a key to the entire plot, and I liked. Well, who was her voice actress?
Emily Blunt, a British actress who I think is the star of all those Underworld movies.
I did like her vocal performance. If there's one thing I do like, is I enjoyed the vocal performances of the main character, of the new characters, because it seemed like they were having fun with this role. They had a much more cynical edge to them, which appealed to my personal taste in comedy. But Emily Blunt's character as Tempest Shadow, she was a very generic character with a very generic backstory, and it seemed like her switch to the dark side seemed very fast, but I guess that could be just as a result of how they told her origin. We had Michael Pena as Gruber. He was sadly, as great as an actor as Michael Pena is. Gruber himself, the little devious henchman to the main villain, is a very boring character who does nothing but eats pies and cake throughout the show. Liev Schreiber.
It's a shame too, because the TV show itself usually gives their villains better character quirks, or reveal that the villains have a different side to them other than just a one-note joke.
Right.
It's not always the case, but yeah, this character that Michael Pena is playing is definitely kind of a disappointment there. I honestly, if this was the same higher writing that you expect from the TV show, relatively speaking.
Liev Schreiber, who I remember from... sorry, Shinchoma, I just really do not care.
All right, then I won't finish my point.
Actually, the TV show is better because fuck you.
You agreed to this, okay? You have yourself to blame
I did not
as
agree
well.
to being nice.
No. Let's just put this out on the record, because I don't want this audio commentary, this little podcast, to be used against me by my arch nemesis Jack Hodgson. Just play along, okay?
Okay.
But I honestly, I gave you the chance to back out before we started. We can watch a 1 hour Halloween-related horror movie or something, and it's no.
I did this as a favor because I care about you, my friend.
I appreciate that, but at the same time, I did give you multiple ways out.
I know. Let's see.
Right.
As continuing onwards, Liev Schreiber, who I was really surprised was the main villain of this movie, the Storm King. I did like that he was making fun of his stereotypically evil sorcerer bad guy role in the movie. Other than that, he's not a deep character at all. We don't know his origins or his motivations or why he does the things that he does. He's just evil for the sake of being evil and because he loves being evil. And Liev Schreiber does a decent job at that. I didn't know he was good at comedy, because he has really good delivery with some of his lines. Yeah, he did play a very snarky character when he was Sabretooth in the X-Men Origins Wolverine. That was the last movie I remembered him from.
And that's supposed to be a good example?
Nope. Let's see. Zoe Saldana, I did like her. The Parrot Pirates were probably my favorite characters in the whole movie, and I wouldn't mind seeing a whole movie about them. Let's see. And finally, there was what was the cat's name?
Capper.
Capper, yeah. Capper was all right. I did like by the time the ponies left that place, what is it called, Equestria, and they went into some Tatooine desert style city. I did like the color palette there. It became much more palatable for me personally.
Oh, I saw what you did there.
Yes.
Big old pun badge coming your way through the mail.
Let's see. Other than that, yeah, I enjoyed most of the new characters introduced in this movie. The seahorses, they didn't really leave any impression on me, although it was amusing to recognize Uzo Aduba as the queen of the seahorses. I remember Uzo Aduba as Crazy Eyes from Orange is the New Black, and Bismuth from Steven Universe.
And true to those two characters, it's funny how the story of Queen Novo doesn't end on a good note either. So
yeah. Other than that, yeah. Nothing else. It's funny. The main characters did not interest me in the slightest. However, it was the new characters that will, like I said, have no impact on the show that I enjoyed the most. With Emily Blunt, I think, being the weakest of the new characters.
Yeah. With that said, I need to make a correction right here, right now.
And Michael Pena.
Emily Blunt has never appeared in any of the Underworld movies. She's appeared in tons of films that we're familiar with. The Devil Wears Prada, Sunshine Cleaning, the Wolfman remake, that terrible Jack Black Gulliver's Travel,
Romeo and Juliet,
Bureau,
The Muppets,
a cameo in The Muppets. Yeah,
she was in Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh yeah, as the Iron Wench, Into the Woods. Yeah, she's been in a lot of movies, but she's a good actress, but it's at the same time, she's never been in a movie that's had that big of a memorable impact outside maybe The Devil Wears Prada.
Yeah, she's mostly relegated to being a very reliable side character.
That is true. That's a good point.
Supporting character, I meant to say.
But you're right. She is sort of, compared to the other new characters, she is a little bit of the weaker one, not counting Michael Pena's character.
Right. Although I have to say, once again, the Latino actor plays the comedic second banana. Yeah, and
again, as I was trying to mention earlier, the show, I was honestly expecting, if this was a better script, like when Michael Pena's character discovers the Storm King isn't going to restore Tempest's horn, I thought he was going to protest and we're going to get some real dimensionality out of the character. Instead, no, cake jokes left and right. That's it.
Yep.
Yeah, no, this really did feel like I don't mind that this movie exists, and I enjoyed it as watching it, but at the same time, I don't think I'm going to be revisiting it any time in the future, even as a fan. And at the same time, it's kind of a shame that we desperately need more 2D animation in modern American cinemas, but this is not the best example of it. On the other hand, it sucks that a lot of the professional movie reviews for this film are comparing it to the Emoji Movie as the worst film of the year. And that really is unfair. But then again, critics...
Aren't both of them supposedly similar generic plots about characters going from point A to point B and meeting characters along the way and then have the sad moment only to realize the power was in them the whole time, and then they eventually beat the villain with the power of friendship?
True, that is very true, but the execution, I believe, is far stronger here than the Emoji Movie. It's the equivalent of somebody saying Godzilla's Revenge is the worst Godzilla movie ever made, and yet they've never seen Project Viper on the Sci-Fi Channel or Ultra Warriors 2000s. I, on the other hand, have.
Does that make you better?
No, that doesn't make me better. Those are like 2 hours I wish I got back. How did you feel about the animation? Because it's...
Yeah, it is very off, and it's even more so a problem than in the TV show. With the TV show, I would say the fluid animation is decent for what it is for the TV show, but I was never a fan of that style of animation. When it comes to the flash animation, I always prefer the frame-by-frame method, similar to what you would see in, say, Motor City, if you ever saw that show on the Disney Channel, which looks
I have
absolutely...
not seen Motor City, but I've seen enough footage and scenes from it to know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you couldn't even tell it's Flash. However, this is the type of Flash where it looks like each body part of a single character looks like pieces of a puzzle, and they're just like stretching and squashing these individual pieces. So it looks like each body part of the character looks like rubber, if you know what I mean. It was something I first noticed as a child in Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, and where I was like, these characters move very strangely, as if they are pieces of rubber of paper being stretched out, or like flat pieces of paper that are being stretched into these poses, or snapping into these poses. So even as a child, my eyes could tell that this style of Flash animation was not what you would usually expect out of it. Out of 2D animation. So I've never been a big fan of that, and so it's even more a problem here because it's trying to look like a big, expensive cinematic movie, which we haven't had in a while. Like back in the day, there used to be a lot of cinematic TV movies, like the Rugrats movie, the Wild Thornberrys movie, Doug's first movie, Teacher's Pet, the movie, Hey Arnold, the movie,
Recess,
the movie, Digimon, the movie, and all these movies, they would take the standard art style from the TV show and give it a more cinematic feel with sharper colors, darker shadows, all that kind of stuff. And so I see a lot of that similar upgrade from TV to movie. However, for some ungodly reason, they still chose to stick with Flash animation, and it looks very awkward. Like, it's trying to look cinematic, but yet at the same time, it's staying close to its roots. So it's like it's playing a tug of war with itself, whether it's cheap animation trying to look like expensive animation, and it looks very awkward, and especially at points where there's supposed to be a big, heavy action movie, and that's when the environments are rendered in CG animation, and at that point, it looks very bad to the point where I would compare it to the Mexican Top Cat movie.
I would disagree that it's that bad, and I have seen the Mexican Top Cat movie.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you do know that they are using a different animation process than they do in the TV show itself.
It doesn't surprise me.
But yeah, it does feel like maybe a little more polish on this movie would have worked. Because there's some scenes that actually do look quite good, and then there's some other scenes where it's far less so.
I would say like some of the more awkward scenes are whenever the ponies are facing, like usually they're always standing at what I call like a 3/4 pose. Mm-hmm. So you can see the front of their face and the side of their face at the same time. It's similar to what you would see in every animated series, where you never see a character look straight to the side or straight forward. It's at that angle. And whenever they're not portrayed as in that angle, or whenever they're like turning around, that's when the animation gets a little awkward looking for me. Especially when they're running at an angle.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that until you mentioned it. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all we have to say about this movie.
Well, what are your thoughts on the music?
They've had much catchier songs in the show itself, and some of the songs in here I actually did like the song where Rainbow Dash basically gets the pirates back to their original selves by that we can be awesome. Mm-hmm. And of course the song that Tempest have with Twilight Sparkle, as you mentioned. There's no doubt Jonathan Young is going to be doing a heavy metal version of it.
Yeah, a lot of it feels like it's trying to ape classic Renaissance era Disney.
Yeah. It's you made tons of gags about that during the watching. So you never had a friend like me after Capper's song was done. So. Mm-hmm.
Or when the villain song was done, the bells of Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Hellfire, dark fire, be prepared.
That is a good comparison. I will say this: I did enjoy the instrumental music a lot, especially the motif they use when they meet the hippogriff sea ponies under the ocean.
Under the sea.
Okay, stop it. Oh, okay. Just to clarify, no, there's no under the sea style song they have there. Although,
could have fooled me.
Yeah, but no, I mean the actual orchestral soundtrack itself. Outside the songs, I thought was pretty good.
The villain's orchestral sounded a lot like the 2014 Godzilla theme.
Now, yeah, with that said, though, do you think that's just a problem with American films in general, that we no longer have memorable background music? It's all because so generic, you can almost switch them out from one for the other?
Yeah, because everybody's trying to be Hans Zimmer nowadays.
Well, it's not just that, but it's like, in the old days, you would get people like Bernard Herrmann, the guy who did the music for Psycho and The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad.
Mm-hmm.
As well as the great John Barry, who did tons of soundtrack work, especially for the 007 movies, but also Star Crash and Fahrenheit 451. And they went out of their way to really make their music stand out. Like, the music itself could be listened to as their own standalone songs, with or without the images. Now today, it's like, even when you get like great composers like the guy behind Star Wars, what's his name?
John Williams?
Yes, yes, thank you so much. Even if you get John Williams on board on your movies, and yes, John Williams has done some fantastic pieces of music lately. In fact, he's one of the few reasons The Phantom Menace has any merits. Unfortunately, like, all the music is so generic and similar to one another that even with the visuals, they don't really leave an impact. It's like, I like the Harry Potter soundtrack, for example, that really angers me that it's, as a listen to on its own, it really doesn't hold any value, and it's almost forgettable and unlikable. Or it's like even the soundtrack to the King Kong remake. Like, the music is great when it's with the visuals, but it cannot stand on its own. And sadly, as you mentioned, a lot of the music in this movie sounds similar to what we've heard elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, is that just a problem with modern day Hollywood, that all the soundtracks are so generic to one another, and there's barely anybody who can do good soundtracks anymore?
Probably.
Or even because even Hans Zimmer, give Hans Zimmer a animated movie or a comedy like Megamind, and he goes to town. He creates some really good themes and memorable music. But when he's told to do the same monodical, boring music for a superhero movie,
mm-hmm.
then it's like, well, what's the point? So it's like the creativity has been dammed up. All right, so now on the rating system, what would you give this movie? And are you okay if we use the 4-star system, or you want to use your 5-star?
I shall use my 5-star as much as, like, how I would allow you to use your 4-star.
I think I'm gonna actually, since you suffered through this film, so to speak, I think I'll do the 5 stars too, so we're on the same level. But what would you give this movie?
I'll give this movie a 2 out of 5. It's a completely harmless movie that's perfect for children, who enjoyed the series. Like I said, I remember when I was their age and I saw shallow movies such as these almost every week. And I always had a good time watching them. I'm sure, looking back on them, maybe the majority of them weren't even all that good. But for, like, in the moment, I can definitely see a lot of the kids having a great time with this movie if they enjoyed the source material.
And there's way worse kid movies out there too.
Right. If you're someone who is curious about getting into My Little Pony, definitely avoid this at all costs. And even if you are a brony or a Pegasus or what, if you're a fan of My Little Pony, I can see how you would have some enjoyment out of this, but don't go in looking for a particularly memorable experience. So if you're a My Little Pony fan, I would say it would be like a 3 out of 5 experience for you. Like, check it out once and, get it over with. But if you're a child, I would say this would definitely be, If you're a child, this would definitely be like a 3 out of 5 experience for you. But for anyone else, it's very much 2. In fact, it's a 2 out of 5 because 2, I think, has more bad than good. However, I believe there is still a very limited audience that is sure to enjoy this kind of movie. And that is what my 2 rating is for.
Yeah, out of the 5-star rating, I'm going to go with 2.5 stars.
Mm-hmm.
However, with that says, I can't tell because the movie is better than similar films of this fashion. For example, it's definitely not the Emoji Movie. The Emoji Movie is just, I've seen it. It's just an embarrassment of corporate advertising disguised as a boring, hip Lego ripoff. Lego movie ripoff. And this is coming from a guy who's now starting to see a lot of the flaws in the Lego Batman movie.
How dare you?
Yeah, it was fun. It's a lot of fun. I still enjoy it. It still put a smile on my face, but I'm starting to see a lot of problems with it upon repeat watching. But also there is some bias because I am a fan of the show and I'm familiar enough with it that I was able to ease into the viewing experience with this one. But I do totally agree with you. There are, this is for little kids. I think they're just going to adore this. And there's way worse children's films out there. I would rather have a little kid watch something with slight substance like this film as opposed to the Emoji Movie or even like oh god, that really terrible Lorax movie from a couple of years ago.
I think that might have been 10 years ago at this point.
Wow, really? That long? Actually, the Lorax is nowhere near as... I can't tell what is the worst Dr. Seuss movie.
Oh, sorry, no, that was only 5 years ago, not 10. It feels like 10 years ago.
Okay, but yeah, it's harmless. It's a decent watch one time. I think diehard fans of the show and little kids who will get a lot more out of this, and hence the reason why probably I'm giving it 2.5 stars out of 5. But no, it could have been a lot better. I really was hoping this movie to not only be very good for fans, but also be an entertaining time for non-fans, and unfortunately that definitely is not the case, and I think that's the biggest failure a spin-off film from a television series or an ongoing franchise can do. Because, it's like, again, the great thing about a Godzilla movie is that many of them are so self-contained, and they vary in quality that you can pick one of the better ones and bring in a non-fan on board. Like, I've converted so many regular people into occasional kaiju watchers by showing them movies like Gamera the Brave or GMK, all Giant Monsters All Out Attacks, the better examples of this stuff. Here, though, this is definitely not a good way to get a non-fan into the franchise. So, but, there you go. That's all I can say about it. Wow, for a guy who didn't give a crap watching it, you gave a much more elegant final review. So.
Thank you very much. And while to be honest, I do not care for My Little Pony. A lot of my anger in this review is merely played up for the sake of comedy, just on my behalf, on Rap's behalf, hopefully the audience. If I offend you in any ways, I just want to let you know that I'm really not that serious. I just did not care. But I will say, honestly, I did not enjoy this movie in the slightest outside of those few vocal performances by those celebrity voice actors.
So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for, hopefully you actually stayed and listened to the whole review and got all our thoughts instead of just storming out in the first couple of minutes. Either because, one, you're a diehard fan angered by our comical dismissals, or you're a non-fan who just utterly hates the idea we're even doing this in the first place. In both regards, bite me. So... But no, Andres, thank you for suffering through this.
Bite me, more like fight me.
Exactly.
Put up your dukes.
We'll take on all comers.
What do the kids say nowadays? Catch me outside.
I don't know. I'm an old man. I don't know what the kids are into, other than this pony crap. Okay, but no. Thanks, Andres, for actually putting up with this idea.
Why didn't Transformers Prime or Transformers Robot in Disguise get a tie-in movie? Why did it have to be this?
Well, because I think Michael Bay pretty much ruined any chance of a good Transformer movie outside this.
Damn it!
You know what's the really sad thing to take away from this film?
There's no He-Man animated series, there's no G.I. Joe animated series, nor movie.
No, it's not that. Okay, this movie was made from All Sparks Entertainment, which is the movie firm of Hasbro, the toy company.
Mm-hmm.
And Allspark has been partially responsible for the Michael Bay Transformers films, but they're also responsible for that terrible Gem movie. They were responsible for the Max Steel film. They were responsible for Battleship.
Oh no!
Yeah. So here's the tragedy of it all. This is the best Allspark movie we've gotten so far from these people.
Oh no! Hey now, they're Allspark. They couldn't get their game on. Okay. Hey now, they are all Sparks. Go play, because all that glitter, that glitter ain't gold. Only shooting stars can break this mold of bad movies.
Are you done?
Maybe. Because somebody once told me that the world was indeed going to roll me. And you know what? I ain't really the sharpest tool in the shed. But she was looking kind of... This movie was looking kind of dumb, with its finger in the thumb, in the shape of an L on her forehead.
Andres,
well, the years start coming, and they don't start coming. Get to the ground, gotta hit the ground running. Did it make sense not to live for fun? Your brain gets smart and your head gets dumb. So much to do, so much to see. So what's wrong with taking the back street? You'll never know if you don't go, and you'll never shine if you don't glow.
Hey now, you're an all-star. Get your game on, go play. Hey now, you're a rock star. Get the show on, get paid.